Wired access.
We'll do it live.
Wired access.
Do it live.
Wired access.
We'll do it live.
Wired access.
Welcome to Wired Access Season 2. We have made it here. Another signed 48 episodes with Hurrdat Productions. Thank you very much for those who have supported our show all the way up to this point. Make sure if you haven't already, hit that subscribe down below, hit the thumbs up, whatever you do to share, like, follow. But make sure you help our message get out to others so they can find whether it's an inspiration, whether it's a stress, a struggle, or anything of that sort that one athlete has went through that could help them get over to the hump to get to their next level. Today, I'm welcome with my co-host, Brian Southworth, owner of Wired Training Center. And then in the middle of both of us, we have AJ Forbes from the Montana Grizzlies. Woo, man, the energy that this guy brings. He is a former Bellevue West football player, so he's from the area. He grew up in the area. He grew up with the same passions that a lot of kids had, but his journey to where he is today is something that I think some people have to realize. It's okay to go off course because the finding that you had is something that many players can't say they've experienced on the other end of success, right? So we'll get into his story. First of all, welcome to the show. You just finished the biggest year that Montana's ever had. We'll get into that part because I could already see the smile, just the energy that your team brings. But, man, you're from Bellevue. What was it like growing up around here in football, and where did it all start for you, just the love of football?
Growing up, my dad was always my youth football coach. I started playing tackle football when I was 7 years old because I was always the biggest kid in my grade, and there was no use in a big kid like me playing flag football. So
Wasted time.
Exactly. I was always going to be an offensive lineman. I knew that. But yeah, I started when I was 7 years old. My dad started coaching me all the way through Little League, or the old BJSA football league, all the way through middle school, and went to high school at Bellevue West. Won a state championship there. And I've loved growing up in Bellevue. Bellevue has been a special place in my heart. Obviously, it's where and just in terms of sports, it's where I fell in love with football. It's where I fell in love with competition, and it's given me a lot of different skills that I've taken forward in my life.
Well, and I like that you brought up, let's just say BJSA, because of course the numbers aren't the same as a lot of the schools or the other products that are out there. So you really have to play both ways. You have to really experience that factor of the game. What was it like growing up, just even on that part, to learn your competition part? Because you're going up against some teams. I remember we played some Millard West teams or Millard South teams, and they got 30, 40, 50 people on the other sideline. You might have 22, maybe 25. What was that like, and how did that start the fire for you?
Yeah, obviously, the younger I was when I was playing tackle football, it was all about, you never really know what you're doing when you're a little kid. It's all about having fun. It's all about playing with your friends. All of my teammates from when I was like 7 to 10 years old, we all went to school with each other. We saw each other every day during school, and then went to practice and played games with each other. So that was awesome. The older I got, the more I really started to understand what competition was, especially with my dad being my head coach. We would go home and we would talk about, he would draw stuff up on the whiteboard for me. Just at the super early age, he would draw stuff up on the whiteboard for me and explain to me how different things worked. And the older I've gotten through my football career, the more I understood that the ultimate goal is to win. It's not necessarily to have fun. It's to win, because winning is fun. you know what I'm saying?
I like that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's not like you go out and play a game and you lose. You're like, oh man, I had fun though. It's it's winning is having fun, and that's what I learned at a young age.
Well, and I like that he's bringing that up. Brian, your kids are young. You're hearing this from someone. You coach your kids. These are the messages that you have to try to portray early, but it's not always easy. You're looking at the competition that you're going up against. you're also looking at the level of your sons. What is it hearing, obviously, a football player who's made it all the way to the college level and played at the highest level for himself and more?
Well, I mean, gosh, if you look at like, what sports and the ability to build character through sport, right? I mean, that mindset is wanting to win. That's going to carry you all through life, right? I mean, there's going to be nothing in life that, you're going to go in and it's like, okay, I can be second. That person can have that promotion. That person can have that, right? Like, man, like you want to win in everything you do. So, I love hearing that mentality because in today's world, you don't always hear that. But, deep down, I know the most successful people I know have that same mentality.
When you look at what you grew up with, other sports, was there anything else besides football? I was a football coach, so I know how, as a father and all that, you kind of stick hard on that. But I also had to go outside of my box and fill in one time for soccer coach. I had to fill in one time for a basketball coach. So I had to learn that aspect. Was it only football for yourself?
No, I mean, you hear coaches talk about it all the time now. I think it's truly important to really delve into different sports. Like growing up, I was never just a football player. My first sport was actually soccer, and my dad hated that because the whole stigma around soccer. I'm not going to get into that, but but it was just for little AJ to get into a sport and be active and start learning what sports are and everything like that. But my primary sports growing up it was football, obviously, and then I was a big baseball player. My dad was a minor league baseball player for a long time in the Royals organization. My mom was a softball pitcher. She pitched at Omaha St. Mary for a long time. She had a great career there. At middle school, ran track, ran the 100-meter, threw shot, put, and disc, all the way up all the way up through high school. So no, I think it's really important for kids, especially early on, to go into different sports.
Well, and I like that you brought up the 100 meters because a lot of linemen, they try to just stick to the throwing. What did the 100 meters help you, not just physically, but I think even more mentally, just the understanding that I'm not here to win, but I'm here to continue to get myself better? What was that like growing up?
Yeah. I think especially when you look at track athletes, a lot of the times it's, of course you're trying to win the race, but a lot of the times you're trying to beat your last time. And growing up, I was naturally a gifted athlete. I was blessed enough to be tall, to be fast, to be strong. And so being in the 100-meter was something that was generally out of my comfort zone initially, but I was able to get better at it. I was able to compete, and I was able to go out and compete in a sport where, like I said, I was out of my comfort zone. There's kids that were 100 pounds smaller than me, and that I was trying to beat in races. And frankly, I did pretty good in the 100-meter, but it wasn't my strong suit, but it was something I really enjoyed competing in.
Well, and I like that you brought up comfortability. And everything's easy if you stay comfortable. But when you get out of that, how do you think that also just help your mindset understand that I'm okay to continue this battle even when it's not in my favor?
I think you touched on it. In today's day and age, it's people like to stay in their comfort zone, and when you stay in your comfort zone, you don't really grow. It sounds cliche, but I think when you go outside your comfort zone, it allows you to test yourself. It allows you to see, okay, I'm good at this, but if I go over here, I'm not good at this. How do I need to improve in order to get better at that? And I think that's a really valuable experience.
Brian, multiple sports, multiple events. I've told you many times on the show of how important that junior high or middle school is, where your kids get a test, they get to try things. Have you really thought of that? I mean, Gunner's coming up real quick. And of course, baseball is the family gym, right? That's what you live on. But there's got to be that outlet for them to go, okay, maybe I can learn something from that other sport. And each semester, each quarter, they get to do something different for free compared to, let me go pay this hundreds of dollars to some organization that I don't even know what I'm a part of.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting to a mindset where you can be comfortable being uncomfortable is one of the most valuable things for a kid or, a young adult kind of growing up, because it's that growth mindset that, hey, like I'm challenging myself every week. I know, like this is where I'm at now, and that's just the time and place, right? But this is what I can work towards. And, I'm sure he took that same mindset as, if I improve in my 100-meter dash, right, or 100-meter sprint, it's going to make me a better lineman. So that growth mindset, is probably what helped make him what he is today.
So when you look through your high school stuff, when did you really start to hone in on the football side, whether it be camps, whether it be extra workouts? Because I think everybody's different now. That's always the same, right? But if you at least start to think about it, look at it at a certain age, maybe you can start developing those tendencies.
Yeah. Like I said, in high school, I was doing different sports, but it was always a goal of mine to play college football. I kind of knew that was the avenue that I was going to. That's really the sport that I took the most interest in, and I think that was a sport that I was the best at. And so I wouldn't say I was kind of funneling myself into football in high school, but I knew that's kind of where my best chance was to play college sports. But just kind of going forward from there, it was, early on, especially, my freshman year, I was starter on the varsity team, and that was a big deal for me. That was something that was a goal of mine. And after that point, there was a bunch of college scouts that would come and gauge my interest and really see if they were interested in me as well. I think a lot of people don't realize that they don't think about if the prospect is interested in the school. It's really if the school is interested in the prospect.
And when you talk about this part of that, I think sometimes it's a scary road, right? You got some that will deny you, some will that make you feel like you're $1 million. What was that feeling through? And what was there certain schools that you already had eyes on thinking of and what you wanted?
Yeah, growing up in Nebraska, the goal is to play for the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I think if you talk to any 10-year-old kid that plays football, their goal is to play for Nebraska.
See, that's hard though, because you guys haven't seen them win.
I know.
So that's like there is that persona, but there's also like, I got to get out of here because they're not winning. I want to get more.
And I think you're starting to see that now, especially in the last few years. We could talk about my Nebraska journey if you want. But,
of course.
Really going through the recruiting process, you're especially when you're a highly recruited prospect. I mean, it's like the dating scene. Like everyone wants to come and get you and get a piece of you, and you're getting courted by all these different coaches. They're explaining to you how their place is the best place for you. But what was really frustrating to me during the recruiting process is I knew that I could play at the Division I level. And I was blessed enough to get a bunch of a ton of Division II scholarships. The one I would really like to mention is Northwest Missouri State, because I thought they're a great football team. Obviously, Coach Boswick is a great family friend of ours, and he was nothing but loving and caring and wanted the best for me. But that was kind of the part of my recruiting process that was difficult, because I knew I could play at the Division I level, but I wasn't really getting a whole bunch of that attention.
Well, and I like Brian, he brought up a great point of some of these coaches really make you feel like the family because they mean it. And obviously Northwest Missouri State has been one that comes up here and grabs kids left and right, but it's with purpose. It's not just going, hey, let's see what we can dig into the area. And when you look at just the college rankings, I mean, you got South Dakota State now coming down, and you got North Dakota State that will grab some kids, and you're seeing kids even go to Oklahoma State. You're seeing all these kids get the opportunity, but then if you look at some of the local, it's very slim pickings, whether it's the Huskers, whether it's, Kearney's starting to pick up now, but for a while they weren't looking here. So when you see that in the realm of Nebraska wanting Nebraska, it's kind of scary to think that it's easier to go across the state line, for these kids.
Yeah, it's tough. I think the state of the Nebraska football program has kind of changed, like since, when we were kids. But also I think like social media has to play a huge role in that, right? I mean, there's a ton of talent in the state of Nebraska. We know that. I mean, it's a great product on the field, but now with like Huddle and the ability to share videos, I think it just helps get these kids out there in front of these coaches and see different options other than just Nebraska.
Did you feel social media and Huddle helped you or possibly hindered a little bit?
I think recruiting through social media is bigger now than it was even when I was in high school.
Yes.
I mean, now that I think about it, I mean, that was 10 years ago, which makes me feel really old. But I thought I tried to use social media as a way to market myself, to try to now looking back on it, it was me trying to build some kind of brand for myself to try to put out there for coaches to see and for them to see what they would get in me as a prospect.
And when you think of that, was it stuff where coaches would kind of help and let you know? Because we always say it, one post could be the beginning of something big, and one post could totally ruin anything that you ever thought you had in a brand.
Yeah, that's the really scary part about social media is like you have to, if you're going to use that as a basis for recruiting, if you're in high school and you're going to use social media to try to get yourself recruited, I mean, you kind of has to turn into a job. If that's going to be a part of your recruitment, you have to be able to say the right things. You have to, most importantly, you have to know what not to say, what not to post. Because like you said, there's a lot of kids, there's a lot of kids out there that really get in trouble for what they even retweet, share on social media. So it could be a real hindrance. But for me, I kind of understood that when I was doing it, and so I tried to put out as much positive information out there as possible.
Well, you said your parents were both athletes. Mm-hmm. The athletes of what they were to today's athletes is a night and day difference. Mm-hmm. What guidance were they able to provide for you on that aspect of how to represent yourself? Social media wasn't a thing for them. I remember when we were growing up, we're pulling out tapes and putting tapes together, not, this, hey, we'll just take clip 63, 68, 69, boom, I got a showcase.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that they helped me with, it wasn't so much the social media, because they didn't understand that as much. It wasn't it wasn't anything like that. It was just kind of getting through the fluff of recruiting, because there's a lot of sales, there's a lot of, hey, come to my school. It was them pushing me to look through all the fancy stuff, all the fluff that a recruiter would throw at me, and really focus on, okay, do I want to go to school there? Do they have the degree that I'm interested in? Do I get along with the coaches? That's another thing. People, when you hear all the time, like, don't go to a school because of the coaches. Go to the school because you want to go to school there. You want to play for that program. You want to have that university on your chest. I think going to a school where you get along with the coaches is huge, because that's who you're going to spend a lot of your time with. That shouldn't be the primary decision, but I think that's a huge factor, because that's who you're going to spend most of your time with. But yeah, my parents allowed me to look through all the fluff in recruiting and really focus on what was important.
Brian, the word fluff has came up a lot, and it's almost like let me show you my big spoon, as you got a spoon. How do you think are some of the things that you're going to also provide for your kids to understand the difference between the real and the fake of what a recruiting could be for them?
I think, one important thing is the coach recruiting you is probably not the same coach you're going to play for. I mean, there's a salesperson that's going to recruit you, and then there's a coach that's going to coach you. And sometimes, I think a lot of people get the salesperson, right? Then they show up on campus and they're like, this was not the same person that recruited me, and then I think there's a lot of schools that, they spend a lot of money in cool things, but like, what do they do with it? What is like their development program like? And then other parts like roster, right? To being like, what's the depth in that position? I think those are kind of like three things that get overlooked quite a bit.
And when you look back to everything that you're dealing with through the recruiting process alone, what was your biggest thing that you would say for a recruit to watch for on the fluff side? And what do you think is something that you were able to pinpoint that this is genuine, this is what I feel to you?
It was kind of hit on already, but I think I think the major thing that a recruit needs to look for as they're going through the recruiting process is don't pay attention to how they invest in their facility, how they invest in trying to make things look cool, new uniforms. It's tough growing up when you're a 16, 17-year-old and you're like, hey, Oregon's got some pretty sweet uniforms, you know. But
This is talked about every time because it's that real.
yeah,
I mean,
no, it's real, and it's. I mean, you got to be. Once you go into college, I mean, you got to kind of turn into a man. You know, you got to really look at what's important. You got to ask tough questions. It's going to be but you got to ask those tough questions to your recruiter, who, like you said, might not be your position coach. Like when I was getting recruited to Nebraska, it was old Coach Kenny Wilhite, Coach Greg Austin, who was the offensive line coach when I was there.
I could sell a ketchup stick to a guy wearing white gloves.
No, he's a great dude.
And I don't mean it in a bad way. I mean, he's good.
100%. Like he truly, I agree with you. He truly cared about every player that walked in through that door and wanted to make sure that they were happy, that their potential was getting reached. He would push you if you needed pushed. No, but he was a great dude. He was one of my favorite guys on that staff.
Well, and go ahead and just talk about that for a moment. Obviously, okay, you're playing for Bellevue West, powerhouse local football program. So you're seeing success, you're winning a championship, you're looking to go to that next level. What was just that recruitment like prior to Nebraska? What was that scene like for you? What was the feelings? And then what was it after you finally get the first talk from the team that you're really ideal looking to go to?
Yeah. My senior year at Bellevue West was when Scott Frost was coming back in to be the new head coach at Nebraska. And with that came a lot of hype. It became, there came a lot of real excitement around the state, because he was the guy playing quarterback in the late 90s and
coming off an undefeated season.
Coming off an undefeated
coming
season.
off a coaching fire.
Yeah. I mean, the excitement felt like an all-time high in Nebraska when he got hired. And I got offered a walk-on spot. There was a walk-on night that they hosted, and so there was a lot of great talent around the state of Nebraska. I mean, just off the top of my head, it was Brody Bell from Millard West, all-state running back. It was Matt Masker, who's one of my best friends, C1 all-time leading passer for a little while.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
Isaiah Stallbird, who I just played against in the national championship, who plays at South Dakota State now. And there was a great walk-on class. They got invited up there. Each of us got into Coach Frost's office, and we were extended the walk-on offer, and a lot of us took it because they were really selling the walk-on program. They really wanted to rebuild that tradition, because obviously Nebraska has a huge walk-on tradition. They were trying to rebuild that, and we almost all of us took the offer. Yeah.
And when you think of that offer, what's the parents' talk behind it? They probably aren't caring about the money part. I mean, I know for me, if you're going to live a dream and you're going to do it, I'll worry about that other stuff later. Obviously, grades could take care of it, whatever it is. What was that like with the parents when you first got to talk to them about the preferred walk-on?
Yeah. So at that point in my recruiting process, I was really choosing between that walk-on offer and then actually going to the Air Force Academy on a full football scholarship. With the experience, I loved the experience at Air Force. I loved all the coaches there. The campus is one of the most beautiful campuses you'll ever see. The football program is obviously very good. It was just the military commitment at the end of that playing career there is kind of what I wouldn't say scared me away, but that's just not the career path that I wanted to go to. I'm so thankful for Coach Lobo and all those guys at the Air Force Academy, but I was really choosing between them and then that walk-on offer at Nebraska. And I remember getting into the car after we left campus, and I'm talking with my parents, and I was talking about how, hey, I know I can play at the Division I level. Air Force was my only other Division I offer at that point. I knew I didn't want to go down that route, and Nebraska was the only other Division I school that really extended that opportunity for me. So I felt like I could walk on, and I could go in and get a scholarship at some point, and that was kind of the trajectory that I had my mind on.
It's got all the right stories. It's got all the right facts. It's got all the right stuff to build up of, man, this is my spot. I'm getting to play I get to wear the red in. Everybody wants the red in. Everybody wants the cream and the scarlet. You step in the atmosphere of the first game, of just even being on the field. What was that like, knowing that this is what you've lived for, and whether you're a walk-on or you're a scholarship, you still got to put on the pads, you got to walk. What was that first moment like for you?
Yeah, I kind of got goosebumps thinking about it right now, because me and a couple other true freshman walk-ons, I remember we got the chance to suit up for the first game. It was a non-conference game against Akron. That game kind of set the tone for Nebraska.
Well,
for the rest
because
of the year.
you know, the worst part is everybody says there's moments in life you remember where you were, what you were doing. Okay, I got 9/11. I used to work at the airport, so I know exactly what I was doing. I was working the 2 to 10 shift. Get a call as I'm waking up about 8 something. Hey, we're gonna need to prepare you when it came to like 9. So like I remember that to the day, you know. But I remember this because I was DJing a Sweet 16 at this girl's house, and it's humid as all get out in Omaha, right? And I'm in the backyard just sweating bullets. They're all in the house, and I'm telling my wife how mad I am that I'm out here. No one's out here. I don't even know why I'm here. And then she's like, don't worry, there's storms coming through. The game might be delayed. And like I even remember hurrying up, packing everything up, getting my parents' house, thinking this game was a go. What was that like from the player point of view? I mean,
it was crazy because it's my first game as a college football player. True freshman walk on. I probably wasn't going to play. Yeah, I knew that, but it was cool. I got to wear the uniform. I got to put the pads on. The tunnel walk was crazy. I remember, like, as a kid, you watch that all the time. And now you get to go experience it. And I remember the gates open and the fog machines rolling out, and then you walk out past the fog and you see 100,000 people in the state. It feels like you're walking into the Coliseum. Like, it was insane. And then, you do the warm up, and then as soon as kickoff happens, the officials come out to the middle field, give the warning. Both teams go to the locker room, and we're sitting there for probably 4 hours. I think it was ridiculous. Yeah, because we were all expecting, like, all right, it's gonna be like 30.
They're gonna get us going.
It's gonna be like 30 minutes to an hour, and we're gonna go back out there, and it's gonna be the first play, yada yada, and never happened. We was all just sat in the locker room for like 4 hours after that, and then Coach Frost comes into the locker room about 4 hours in. He was like, "Hey, they're just gonna call the game," and then we just went home.
That part. You went from the highest peak. Brian, do you remember where you were doing or what you were doing when this game was about to go down?
I was fortunately coaching baseball, so yeah, well, fall baseball, so it worked out. I had mine right, but I do remember the game, and you always just kept looking. It's like, why aren't we starting? Why
do I not see a score?
Right?
Right?
I mean, what's going on? So,
do you feel as a player, had this game went the way it was supposed to and just play, win, lose, or draw, do you think this would have changed any of the trajectory?
I don't think so. I think it would have been nice for
because I could tell you it wasn't a guarantee win, that's for sure. Because Akron was already coming off some heaters.
Yeah. No, I don't think it would have really changed the trajectory of the Frost era at Nebraska. There's when you look at a struggling program that just consistently struggles. There were so many guys in that locker room that cared and tried so hard to try to right the ship, and like Mo Berry, Matt Farniak, Tanner Farmer, just all those guys. They were so steadfast in their focus and their preparation for everything. It was awesome to see something like that, in spite of the fact that you're consistently having losing seasons. consistently seeing adversity in front of you, just trying to get to a bowl game, even.
As we're sitting here 7 years later.
No, it was just I want to shout out Tanner Farmer for a second, because he was a guy that kind of took me under his wing when I got there. He is the nicest guy. He did everything he could to try to make my freshman year as tolerable as possible, because anyone who has played college sports probably knows your freshman year, if you're not playing right away, it's some of the, I mean, it can be miserable, frankly, because you're not playing, you're working out, you're not going out and competing on the field. Most of your reps are coming in practice, and you kind of, you're just kind of in a funk.
So how do you distinguish between you knew what was possibly going to happen to reality?
Yeah, I think looking back on it, I remember going up against, like the Davis twins and just there were so many really good football players on that team. And I think as I go into my redshirt freshman year, which my second year in Nebraska, I felt like I was really starting to develop. I felt like, okay, everything that I thought is coming true. I remember during spring ball and fall camp, every time we would have a scrimmage, they would always grade. They always grade us out. Yeah. And I was graded out really well. So I knew that I was going in the right direction in terms of that.
See, and we did our first year. This is actually our year 3, me and Brian, but first year we did it at his facility at Wired Training. Thank you very much for that, of course. But we'd always have a baseball bat in the back going off because it's at a baseball training center. But we had JoJo Doman on, and that was thanks to Brian Inselman, who's obviously trying to get where we'll get together again. And Brian's like a brother to me. I've known him for so long, but we had JoJo Doman on it. And I think one of the biggest things we had to realize is in that guy's playing career, he had obviously the reconstruction, the knee stuff, right? But he had 3 defensive coordinators that he had to try out for. When you're going through your process and you're thinking and you're seeing coaches come and go and maybe not in your position, what is that like mentally for just even your fellow teammates going through that?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough in my playing career to not have to deal with a massive coaching change. The biggest coaching changes that I have had in my playing career, whether it be in Nebraska or at Montana, it was just coordinator changes. Like just this last year at the University of Montana, we had a change at our offensive coordinator spot, and even then it was an internal promotion. So
that's a little more comfortability.
But I've seen like at Nebraska, there's turnover every year at any school, and it's really tough to go through that turnover because, especially if it's an outside hire, you have to rebuild that relationship that you have with your position coach. I was lucky enough at Montana to have Coach Chad Germer. He's a stud. I mean, I love that guy. He did everything the right way. Me and his relationship was awesome. And it still is. But when you get that coaching change, it's just tough to, it's like starting all over again. You have to rebuild that relationship. If you have a new offensive coordinator, defense coordinator come in, you have to learn their system if they don't adopt the system that you were already running. If you have a new head coach, then then everything changes. So it's just really hard to adjust to that sometimes.
I think it's really tough too. Like when you go with a change, I mean, you're usually like, there's a person that recruited you, a position coach that you're talking to, and then, a new person comes in and you lose that. Now you just got to, like you said, build that trust with a new person. And, they're going to bring in their guys too.
And I'm glad you brought that up because every year there's more people coming in. What was that like going into your red shirt going, okay, they're bringing in people that could possibly take my job because they've already fed them, right?
No, it was my freshman year. The transfer portal wasn't a huge thing, which is a whole other discussion. The transfer portal wasn't a huge thing my freshman year. And that was kind of part of the reason why I decided to walk on at the University of Nebraska, because I looked at the roster and I looked at what kind of depth we had in the O-line position, especially the centers and the guard spots, because I knew that's probably what I was going to play. But yeah, that's tough. Every season, even if you're a solidified starter, they're going to be bringing guys in. Eventually they have to replace you, whether it's that year that they come in or after you leave, they got to replace you somehow. So they're always trying to bring in better guys.
Now you go through the COVID year with Nebraska. What was that year like? And did you feel like it took away from you as a person, or do you feel like it helped you on your mental side to get better of who you are?
Yeah. So I think we got through like a week of spring ball before we left for spring break. And then during that spring break is when the announcement was made that the pandemic was raging, and that we had to shut the school down. We couldn't practice. Nobody was on campus. It was kind of nice to have that time off, because going into that spring, it was like, all right, like this is my time. This is my time to really show this coaching staff that I'm just not a normal freshman walk on. I'm a guy that can compete for a job. I'm a guy that can play at this level. So that part of it was tough. But when we got let go and never came back, that allowed me to really kind of do a self scout on myself and my situation, and really self-reflect on what I was getting out of this experience. So in that way, it was helpful.
Well, and Brian, you've had many athletes that went through this that are now in the MLB or trying to get their way. You're hearing him talk about the reset, the mindset of how does that even go for you've talked to these athletes? What do you think was your biggest thing that you could help them with, and just talking to them? And what do you think is something that you felt like you couldn't help?
I think going into that is all these athletes have had so much time or so structured, right? Like, I mean, they've had like, hey, we're going to do summer weights. We're going to do summer workouts. We're going to compete in the fall, then like spring starting, we're going to get ready for track, right? Like, very rarely did people have like, man, I got 3 or 4 months to be on my own, limited interactions. And there was people that looked at that as an opportunity, right? Like, I get to focus 3 months myself. I get to lift, and do all this and figure out how to make it work. Or there's like, people's like, man, this situation sucks.
I mean, I'll add to that. So when this whole pandemic time is when I decided to go in the transfer portal, when I decided to go to the University of Montana. That whole process of going through the summer, going through fall, a part of fall camp, and then us getting the notification that the Big Sky Conference was canceling the season. I mean, that took a huge toll on all of us mentally, because a lot of the schools at the FBS level, they had their season, whether it was shortened or it was just conference.
They had something.
Or they had something. The hardest part was just not knowing. It was just we were working so hard, and we didn't know if we were going to have a season. All the structure that we had going into that fall was up in the air. We didn't know what was going to happen, and I think I love what you said, Brian, about athletes just consistently having structure in their lives, because that's just how sports are. I mean, it's every day you have is planned, and when we were in that situation of whether are we going to have a season or not, that took a big toll on us mentally and emotionally.
Well, and before you get to that season, you make the decision to leave Nebraska. How's that conversation with yourself? But then you also got to have it with your parents who back everything that you're looking to do. What was that like to even think of it?
Yeah, I mean, that was a real, honestly, that was a real low point in my life. I remember having, after every semester, you have an exit meeting with your position coach, your head coach, or however the program wants to do it. But you usually have an exit meeting with your position coach, and they talk about, okay, what did you do right? What did you do wrong? How can you improve? What's your kind of career trajectory looking like right now? And I remember going into that exit meeting, and I'm prepared to try to make my case like, hey, I feel like I'm improving. I feel like I can fight for the spot. And that's when I get told that that Nebraska thinks I'm too short to play Division I football, that I'm going to have to fight to even get on the travel roster, let alone get a scholarship. And that was a real low point in my life. I remember walking out of the exit meeting, going to the team meeting right after, and I have tears in my eyes. Like I'm just about ready to blow. And then I get to my car and we're leaving for our winter break. And I pull over on the side of the highway and I just start bawling because I feel like my whole career is just falling apart. It's not becoming what I want it to be. So that was a real low point in my life.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're at these games, even if you're not playing, you got anybody that's from the Omaha metro area going, AJ, everybody knows AJ, they know what you've came and done. And now you have to turn it into, man, this isn't going the route. What was the support by the parents, and how long did you even sit on it for a moment before you just went and talked to them about it?
I mean, after I kind of collected myself on the side of the highway,
dude, those are surreal moments. So like you have to understand, like, you're not the only one. You're not the last one. And I say it because that's what we try to get in these messages to these athletes. Like, you're going to have that moment to go, either I'm going to pick myself up off this goddamn ground, or I'm not going to become what I wanted to be.
Yeah. And I really had to, I leaned hard on my parents and my now fiance, Alyssa. I leaned on them hard because, when you have a moment like that, there's a lot of self-doubt. It's like that was the only time in my career, in my college football career, where I was like, I was asking myself, can I do this? I'm being told consistently that I can't do this. Can I do this? Am I not seeing what everybody else is seeing? But no, I leaned on them hard. And they were going to support whatever decision I made going forward after that, because they knew the toll that took on me. And they were just there to try to support me.
Brian, you've talked about measurables. It's starting to become more of a thing of, okay, this is what you need to be, weight, height, whatever. What does it mean when you actually hear it in action at a Division I level?
Yeah, it's tough. We look at a lot of coaches just like, oh, he's this tall, or someone, runs this fast. And then, we kind of take out the, can he ball, right? Like, can he actually play football?
Does he have the it?
Right. So it's tough, because a lot of people get opportunities taken away from them because they don't hit one measurable when, given that opportunity to get in a game, who knows what's going to happen. So that's tough. It's tough to hear. And, I know it's really tough to go through too, because you believe in yourself. Right. And so
parents believe in you.
There's a whole team of people that invested in your success, and, it's just because they think you're not tall enough or whatever. It's tough.
You go through that moment. What was your first call when it went back to the school? Who was the one that you talked to on that, and how did that conversation go?
After that exit meeting, that was in the winter. You go back in for the spring semester. That's when spring ball starts, and I didn't really mention that to my coaches at all. Whether or not that was a good or bad thing, I don't know. But I was just
no 2-week notice.
Yeah. The 2-week notice was COVID. That's what it was. But I was in constant contact with my fiance Alyssa, just about how everything was going, what my experience was like, talking to my parents obviously about everything that was going on, talking to my fellow walk-ons, because the guys had started to leave already, tried to explore other opportunities, and I really didn't want to transfer. I've always been a guy that really wants to stick things out, even if they're not going well. I really want to stick things out. But I knew that if I'm being told by my position coach that that I'm not going to play and I'm too short and my arms aren't long enough and I'm going to have to fight to get on the travel roster for the next couple of years, like at that point, it's self-preservation. It's trying to extend the career that you're wanting to have. You know,
You get to looking at other colleges, you get in the transfer portal. What was that first time like, and what was it like on the options?
so it was kind of like going through the high school recruiting process again. You know, you're getting courted by, you know, however many schools. It was a crazy experience. I was literally out for I think I was in the transfer portal for 2.5 weeks. And I was on the phone from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. I was talking to 15, 16, 17 different schools at a time. And I had to keep a notebook about, you know, who, you know, coach so-and-so is from here and they're offering this, and this is what they think.
I like that. That's a good point. I hope if someone finds it, that's a good gym. Have a notebook of your likes, your dislikes, but really have it so you have names and locations.
Yeah. And like I was finding myself like, you can have a Coach Jackson, but there's like 3 Coach Jacksons, and I was trying to find their like school colors and emojis and trying to add that to the context so I could just keep everybody straight. Because like I said, I was talking on the phone from like 7 a.m. to 9 p.m, you know, trying to find what my next home was. And it was great. You know, there was most of the schools. I think I want to say I had, I don't know, 15 or 16 offers coming out of the portal. Most of those were FCS schools.
But that's got to at least turn the fire back to go, okay, someone sees what I'm seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I got my film together from Nebraska. I put it together. I put it into a YouTube video that I could send out to all these coaches, and the fact that I had all these coaches from Division I schools that were like, hey, we're willing to invest in you as a person, as a player. It was super. It validated my thoughts on myself, which was a great feeling.
And I tell you, that validation to make a big decision. You had 2 schools before, Air Force, Nebraska. What was the last couple decisions there, but before you chose Montana?
Yeah, so Montana came in. My offensive line coach Germer, he came in about 4 days before I committed there. But it was really between Montana, Southeast Louisiana, after they had just came off a playoff berth when they lost to Montana, actually. And the reason I liked the reason I liked Montana was because they were historically elite. They were always good. They're in the top 2, 3 maybe in all-time playoff appearances in the FCS. They had won national championships before. They knew how to do it. Coach Hauk who was the head coach at the University of Montana. He's one of the greatest coaches of all time. He just won. He's won the most games in the Big Sky Conference history. And with Southeastern Louisiana, I really connected with Coach Selfo, who's the head coach, or it was at least the head coach there. I don't know if he's still there or not. His son was actually one of the O-line coaches there.
Okay.
So I got along with them really well, and they were competing. They were a high-powered offense. They were competing in the playoffs. But it was those 2 schools that I was picking from, and I just felt like culturally I would fit better at the University of Montana. It was a bunch, you know, like you look at the roster. I mean, it's a bunch of hardworking, overachieving guys that are coming together to try to win a national championship.
See, when I think of these smaller schools, of course, Wyoming's had a lot of success with grabbing kids here. So, you know, I think of the grit, the grind that Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, like there's elements of the game, but just life that they have to go through that some people just, you're either all in or you're not. Like there is no halfway, oh, I'm going to go to Montana, see what's about. You're either going all in or not. What was the first time walking on that and making that decision and going, this is my home? What was the final reason why it made your home?
Yeah, it was difficult during that recruiting process because it was the height of COVID. I couldn't go on a visit there. I couldn't see the facilities. I couldn't meet my teammates.
You don't get the crowd feeling.
You don't get yeah. So it was literally, and it wasn't just Montana and southeastern Louisiana. Like I was getting like FaceTime videos, the FaceTime tours of the facilities. I had to do my own research. I had to reach out to guys that played at the school that I was being recruited at to really try to gauge their, well, what's the truth? Like this, when you're going through the recruiting process the second time, the first time it feels nice. Like I said, it feels like you feel like you're dating. You're kind of sorting through all the fluff. Second time through, I mean, it's a business decision. I mean, it's not really. You don't get the traditional recruiting pitch. It's, hey, you come here, you get the opportunity to play for national championship. You coming or not? I mean, that's really what it was. And based on the conversations that I had with Coach Germer and Coach Hauk and some of the guys that were there at Montana at that time, I knew it was a bunch of just really gritty, hard-nosed, hard-working people. And I knew I could fit in with that.
If you look at what you've experienced at Montana compared to what you experienced in Nebraska, what do you think was the winning part of it? What do you think that made it where you guys could win?
I think it's just a culture, man. When you say culture, that can mean a lot of different things, but like everybody is bought in at the University of Montana. Everybody.
But that's always the story we heard for Nebraska. Oh, it's Scott Frost. Everybody's gonna be bought in. Like, how do you distinguish what is the real on that? I'm on the outside looking in, what really tells you that is what it is?
I think really it's hard to identify a good culture from the outside in. It's really easy to see inside out. There's a lot of things that happen in a building that a lot of the normal fan doesn't see. It's how do offensive linemen and DBs, how do they mingle with one another? Do they just kind of sit off in separate part of the locker room and don't mind each other? Or is it like Montana where you sit in with like offensive linemen sit with linebackers and they talk with each other? Like everybody's a family. There was no cliques at Montana. Everybody was truly bought in, and everybody who wasn't, it was really hard for them to stay. Because I mean, when you have a culture like Montana, it was a player-led culture. Like the coaches really never had to rip any asses at Montana. It was always like, hey, if you're not doing the right thing, player ABC is going to get into you, and he's going to either tell you to go home or tell you to get it right. I mean, I think that's the true measure of whether a team is bought into the culture that the head coach is setting, is when it's a player-led culture and not a coach-led culture.
And when you look at that part of Montana, how long did it take you to become the AJ Forbes that you are today?
Yeah. The AJ Forbes that I am today, it took when I went there, I made a conscious decision, like, okay, I am going all in. Like, this is my last chance to do what I want to do as a college football player. So I made the mental commitment to go all in. I am looking up how many playoff appearances Montana had. I'm looking up where all my teammates are from. I'm seeing who we played in the 2001 national championship. I was really trying to buy in and really surround myself in Montana culture. That was it took a while for me to become the player that I am today. And I think if you talk to any player, year over year, you're gonna see even just minor improvements that make a big deal. And I was lucky enough to have 42 starts as the center of the University of Montana. And every year I had things that I wanted to focus on to get better, and that's what turned me into the player I am today.
Brian, you have a player here that not only loved to play for the Nebraska, that was his goal. He's 45 minutes from home. Moving off to a state that, one, you're lucky if you can get there by plane, train, and automobiles, right? Depending on the weather.
It's a hike. No kidding.
What's the furthest that you've been away from family that you would think that this would kind of reel in and go, man? I mean, for me, I've never been away from my family except for like my extended family. We've lived in Holland, but it was family. It wasn't,
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I chose like in my backyard when I went to college, right? Like there was that comfortability. Like, I chose a program that had a bunch of success that, I saw myself playing. Unfortunately, I didn't get a lot of playing time. So, and I found out I didn't love playing the game that much, to move on and take the chances that you took. So, I mean, that's someone that truly loves the game and wants to like excel and win. So much respect there.
And that was part of the recruiting process to me, because obviously I would love to stay kind of close to home, because 90% of my family lives in the Omaha metro area. And I would love for my family to see me play as much as possible. But as I went through the recruiting process, there wasn't a whole lot of Midwest schools that were offering me. It was all in the South, and it was the Northwest.
So you already had that mindset going, okay, well, they'll see what they get to see. If not, we'll have to make it work. You get on that first trip to go to Montana from here. What was your, because Montana doesn't have the full shopping center just up and close. I mean, I haven't been through Montana. We just did Yellowstone this last year, so I kind of went in that area of Yellowstone, of just traveling that area. It's a little more dense, where it's wide open areas. You have to get to reality where darkness is a whole different ball game. What was that like in life changes?
So when we decided to make the road trip out, because obviously you gotta get to bed, and you got get the whole thing when you move, except you're moving 17 hours away. So I mean that was a big deal.
It's not an easy flight either.
No, it's not. No, it's not. It's not a cheap flight either. Going to Missoula, but when we started the trip, we went through Wyoming, which is just a desolate drive. I mean, that is just a pain to drive through, because there is nothing there.
Not many speed limits either.
Not many speed limits, but there's nothing there. There's 100 miles between each gas station. So
you better plan where you're stopping. Exactly. You better hope that they're open.
And then so when we got into Montana, the eastern part of Montana is more plains. It's a little hilly, but then you cross the Continental Divide, and that's where you get into western Montana. That's where you see these massive mountains that you're driving through. Which was scary coming back to Omaha, because me and Alyssa decided that we were gonna drive back to Omaha from Missoula in January, which was an awful decision. But that's what happened.
That's what he's been doing. Because I was like, "When can we do an episode?" He's like, "Well, I got to drive back," and I'm like, because I know of even just Yellowstone, there's times where you can't get from east to west. And there's roads that close that you can't. There is no easy detour hey, we're off 96 over here, and there's some road construction. We'll just go down Q, take one right on 72nd, and get back on.
We picked probably the worst weekend to move across the country, but that's what happens when you play in a national championship game, But as soon as we got into Missoula, it's really like a traditional college town, and it is so beautiful. The river runs right through downtown. It separates downtown Missoula from the campus. The facility, like the athletic facility, is right at the base of a mountain. It is the most beautiful campus that you will ever see. But when I got there, like when I was driving through the canyon, and then the mountains open up, because Missoula is kind of surrounded by mountains. It's kind of a bowl surrounded by mountains. You get through the mountains, and everything just kind of opens up, and you see Missoula, and it's just like, oh, I'm here now. Like, this is it. Like, this is happening. This is home. And that's another thing. Like, I didn't know where I was gonna stay. Like, coming in that day when I rolled into Missoula, I didn't know where I was staying. So me and my parents stayed in the hotel for a while until I connected with a couple teammates to crash at their house for a summer. But no, it was a crazy experience driving out there.
Playing for Montana, you get a lot of experiences. What was the one that you're going to cherish? Obviously, this most recent championship run, but there's got to be something that started to keep that fever going for the 42 games that you had to play.
Yeah. Just addressing the 42 games.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like what was the first fire that you felt like this is it?
Yeah. So my first start was against Central Washington, which is a Division II school. We played a shortened spree. I played a 2-game spring season after our fall season was canceled.
Yeah,
we played those 2 games against Central Washington and Portland State in the spring. That first start against Central Washington, like that was the culmination of everything that I had ever been working for up until that point. I was handed the keys to a veteran offensive line, and I was a redshirt sophomore, and they were like, "All right, you got to run the show. If you're going to be a center, you got to run the show. Here are the keys." That was like, I remember walking down the tunnel, going onto the field, and like I was so emotional because, like I said, that was everything that I had ever wanted in my college football experience, to be trusted to be a starter, to be trusted to try to lead a team. And as you go forward, 40 some games later, I think that was really just the competitive side of me. It was the competitive spirit. I was like, all right, I mean, this is everything you ever worked for. I mean, this is it. Like, this is everything you ever worked for is right in front of you. You got to take advantage of it. And that's what really got me through those 40 some games.
What was your calming point at that moment? Because obviously you talk about the tunnel walk for Nebraska. You talk about this part of the goosebumps, all the emotions. How do you ever find a calm before the storm?
The calm, for me at least, the calm happens after the first play. Like after, the pageantry of the game beforehand, you go through the stretch lines, you do whatever each team decides to do before a game. You have kickoff. After that first play happens, that's when it's like, all right, like, I mean, it's just, you're in it. And some guys will get antsy throughout the game, and it takes them a drive, a quarter, maybe even to try to get settled in. But I always said, like, before every game I ever had, even when I was a little kid, some people would ask me if are you nervous? And a lot of the times I would say, yeah, like I'm nervous. But I was always anxious. It wasn't nervousness, it was anxiousness. It was anxiousness to get to that first play. Because after I felt a guy and I felt that first hit, I was good to go.
Bryony brings up 2 great words right there, anxious and just getting through that. You deal with athletes all the time that have this pressure. I mean, you're trying to hit a ball that's going you got to hit it in 1.2 seconds. What's a common mechanism that you think that both sports can use to just get them comfortable in what they need to do?
Yeah, I mean, anxiousness isn't always a bad thing. I mean, that's energy, right? It's that ability to recognize like where this is coming from and to, remind yourself like the separation is in all the preparation I've done. I've done this, I've done this a million times. I know what to do. Sometimes you just got to sit back, take a deep breath, control your breathing, and then go compete, and it's funny, it's like getting hit also helps too a little bit, right? Like it gets you in that like little fight or flight. So
I think when you compare football to baseball, you probably play more baseball games than you practice. In football, you have a week to prepare, sometimes 2 weeks if you have a bye week, to prepare for the game that you're about to play.
Yeah.
And I was so diligent in trying to prepare for the defense that we were playing. Jersey numbers, how do they play such and such formation? If I try to execute this block, how do they respond to it? I was just so diligent in that preparation. And if you prepare well enough, you can see it. I mean, it happened so many times throughout my career where I prepared so well that I go out to the game and they're doing exactly what I thought that they were going to do on a formation, on a play, or whatever. So I think that's huge.
Well, and I tell people all the time, everything that I do is stuff that I love. And even people are like, oh, you got this. We did the live show. As soon as I pulled up, I start walking around. And they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just walking. Like, I got it. I know what I got to do. But if you don't get those butterflies, if you don't get those feelings about what you do, just go ahead and stop. It's not worth putting energy in, even when you've done it a million times. Don't put the energy in something you can't get those feelings back. when you think of those feelings that you went through at Montana and all the extraordinary feelings, what's the number one thing that you're going to miss from those?
I think that really the main thing that I'm going to miss being a Montana Grizzly is just being in that locker room. Like, that was such a great group of guys. I got caught crying during a press conference after the national championship game, because, you know, I wasn't so much emotional that we lost the game. As a competitor, you want to win that game, obviously. I mean, it's the biggest game that you're going to play in your life. You want to win that game. But I wasn't emotional because we lost the game. I was emotional because that was the last chance that I was going to have to be teammates with those guys that I had worked so hard with, that I had fought through adversity with. So that was the main thing.
Did you have any teammates? Oh, go ahead. What you have?
No, I mean, you know, like thinking back on your experience in that, and, you know, reassessing everything that you went through that led up to that point, like, what's one piece of advice you would share, you know, with that high school sophomore that's just getting in this? Like, what's one thing you wish you knew back before you started everything?
I think, you know, the main thing for me is it came kind of innately to me. I don't know if if it was my DNA or the way I grew up. The main thing for me is if you give 100% of what you got to something, you will have no regrets. Like, after the national championship game, like, I gave everything I had during that season. I played through injuries that probably would have put a lot of guys out. Cause I love my teammates, and it's just in my head that I got to give everything that I have for my brothers. And that pushed me through injuries, that pushed me through adversity. It was just giving 100% of what you have into something. That's the biggest thing, because if you don't, then there's no point in doing it.
We'll get you out of here on this one. You're currently working on a new adventure. You got a couple of them. Go ahead and share that. Share the legacy that you felt you left at Montana as well.
Yeah, as far as legacy goes, I hope that my teammates and the fans that were there, I hope that they can look back on my time there and look at my career individually and say, he gave everything he had. He was the leader that we needed. We could always count on him to do what he needed to do to try to put us in the best possible position to win a game. I mean, there's nothing else you could really ask for. In terms of what I'm doing right now, I got done training. My pro day is April 2nd. I got done doing that about 3 hours ago. So I'm working with J.R. Epley, who is the son of Boyd Epley. And I'm working with Gibby Duvall, who is the owner of Explosive Edge. He has a couple locations here in Omaha. So I'm working with those guys. They do a great job. I worked with them in high school and off and on during my college career. So they do great work. I've always had great results when I worked out with them. But also in the meantime, a few years ago, I started this sports media company called Hurrdat Sports. During the COVID season, where we didn't have a season, I found myself looking for something to do. It was an idea that I had been chewing on for a while, and I figured that was a great opportunity for me to do it. I knew that at that time I felt that players weren't getting the proper representation in the sports media. This was before players were doing their own podcasts and doing their own social media stuff. So I wanted to make something that put the focus on the player, as opposed to what that player can or can't do, his successes and failures. So as I've gone through that, I've been doing it kind of more so as a hobby the last 2.5 years, just because of the things that I needed to do as a college football player and as a student at the University of Montana. But at this point, I have a decent chunk of time. So got the website rolling, the social media accounts are rolling right now. The YouTube channel, we're trying to come out with stuff once a week on the YouTube channel. So it's a great experience for me.
Well, I greatly appreciate your story, and the message that you're wanting to give is exactly what we love to give. And I say that as we finish our season 2 first episode of season 2, we got a great message a couple weeks ago. And the message was from a father of someone we interviewed. And all he said was, "Thank you for the interview. I had a couple NBA recruiters look at that video and made the best judgment on my son because of what you did. All because of this story here, and you're going to be a part of it. So once again, thank you very much for helping the story, helping one parent, one athlete understand that you're not alone in these situations. There's no book, there's nothing you can read, but you can listen to what people have experienced to get out of their comfort zone, to beat the stress, the struggles, all the way from the lowest to all the way to the highest of going to the FCS championship. Didn't win, but that experience you could never pay or buy again. Once again, Hurrdat production of Wired Access Podcast. We'll see you next time.